And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
I want to say peace and blessings to everyone. I want to say Shabbat Shalom. Apologies for the delay. Lots been going on. Initially, I was going to push this teaching off to tomorrow night because of the things that have been going on. Had to do a baptism earlier. Had several youth that we baptized earlier today. So, of course, wrapping up the week of vacation Bible school for the youth, but we concluded with having a baptism, and it was awesome. It was really good. So I want to apologize for the delay. I didn't want to just push it back for another day. So I'm going to break this up into two pieces, two parts. The first part I'm going to deal with don't call me a Christian. And the second part, I don't believe in God. Now, I want to make it clear, I am not an atheist, but I will explain. So the first part of this video, again, we're going to deal with, as a matter of fact, let me enlarge my screen because we're going to jump right in here. I don't want to take a lot of time tonight. And I apologize for those that came on again to watch the presentation, but again, had other things going on and just wanted to address those things. And of course, still had to prepare for Shabbat lessons tomorrow that I have to do. But nevertheless, we're going to jump right into it. This really late night session. And if you're not able to watch this in its entirety, I encourage you to watch it tomorrow. So that way you can have something to study for the Shabbat. So again, the first portion of this lesson, I want to deal with, don't call me a Christian, but a follower of the way. And so I'm going to share some information with you, and we're just going to deal with the scriptures, and I'm going to share some historical records with you just so that way you can have for your reference. But I'm going to make it clear, family, just after just really thinking about some of the things I had to address over this past couple of months, really dealing with syncretism. And also we can throw a word in there called interpolate. We see that a lot with language being interpolated, doctrines being interpolated. They are the ones that determine who's right and who's wrong. That they are at the front row seat when it comes to the Most High. the Messiah, the holy text. So I'm going to take my time with this. Shouldn't take no more than an hour. But again, for those that are able to hang this late, I appreciate you. But again, my apologies for the delay and getting started. Let me make sure that I'm good here. All right, want to make sure that I'm good, that my I don't lose power on my computer here. All right, so again, this is what we're going to deal with tonight, and I'm going to make it clear. I want to make sure that uh, there's a distinction, there's a separation, there's for those that really don't know what I believe and stand for. I want to make it clear. I don't refer to myself as a Christian. I don't. At one time I did. And even as I made the transition of leading our assembly out of the church into this walk, I don't refer to myself as a Christian. Initially I did, as I early on in the transition, but I don't now. And I'm going to show you that the disciples, I'm going to show you that Apostle Paul, I'm going to show you that the Messiah did not create the term Christian. I'm going to show you here. I'm going to give you some sources here. I don't refer to myself as a Christian. We don't refer to our place of worship as a church. That is 4th century. The Catholic church, Catholic/Christian church, because no matter how many would try to spin it, Christianity is the daughter of Catholicism. So it wasn't until the 4th century where the Catholic/Christian church began to use the Celt word church. So we don't refer to our assembly. And I'm going to deal with that, not today. I'll deal with that in part 2. But we don't refer to ourselves as a church. We are an assembly. The Hebrew word quahal. We are quahal. We are an assembly of witnesses. Kal, ha, quahal, ha, adath, yashara'al. We are an assembly of witnesses. So those certain things I just don't refer to. Am I knocking those that use it? I'm not. But at the same time, if we're going to jump out the frying pan, then jump out the frying pan. Many of our brothers and sisters haven't jumped out of the frying pan. Many of them have just flipped over inside the frying pan. Right? It's time for us to really draw the line. Draw the line. And I'm going to show you here that when you start dealing with syncretism, that is not something that's just for what was done in Africa. It was done in Europe. The Catholic/Christian church did that right across the board. And this is why we have our people and others that truly want to learn more about the Most High are calling on other deities using other literal names in conjunction with the Most High. So let's go ahead and get started here. Not going to prolong the hour here. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with this word, heretic. Because in the Christian church, many of those that label themselves defenders of Christianity, Catholicism, they'll throw this word around, heretic. We get called that a lot, heretic. So we're going to address that. What is a heretic? This is the etymology dictionary definition of heretic. Now, pay attention to this so that way you can really understand what it truly means. And most that throw these things around based upon their understanding of the definition of heretic, you can call the disciples a heretic operating in heresies. You could say the Messiah based upon how many within the church utilizes and misappropriate that term. You can even say Apostle Paul. So this is what heretic means: one who holds a doctrine at variance with established or dominant standards of or belonging to a heresy. Then you see heretic. So again, one who holds a doctrine at variance with established or dominant standards of or belonging to a heresy, heretic. You see able to choose, right? You see in the New Testament, heretical. You see verbal adjective, to take, heresy. Tell us to see the word heresy. But this is interesting too, as you see the next sentence. The heretic is not an unbeliever, far from it, but rather a man who emphasizes some point of doctrine too strongly and obsessively. That's something to really think about, because it makes you think about Acts chapter 15, when you had some Pharisees who actually believed in the Messiah, but they were basically going behind Paul and Barnabas. And what they were doing is telling the people that they had witnessed to that they had to be circumcised in order to receive the Messiah. Right? And so they had to have a discussion on that. They had to come together and have a discussion on that. But unfortunately, many have come up with the terms Judaizer and all these different things. Those Pharisees, that particular group, believed in the Messiah. It's just that, as you see here, the heretic is not an unbeliever, far from it, but rather a man who emphasizes some point of doctrine too strongly and obsessively. That's key. Kind of like when you start seeing different denominations within the church, right? You have the Holiness Church, and many within the Holiness Church places the point of emphasis on how you dress, or not to go to certain places for entertainment, like movies, the movie theaters. They believe that you're sitting in the seat of the scorn. I'm not saying now, I'm not sure now, but that's what they believed years ago. So that can be considered, according to here, the heretic is not an unbeliever, but rather a man who emphasizes some point of doctrine too strongly and obsessively. So we can get into different beliefs, different denominations. That's why we have so many denominations, or not we, but they have so many denominations among Christianity. I had to correct myself because I'm not in Christianity anymore. I'm not subscribing to Christian anymore. So within Christianity, you have so many denominations. So that's because many within that belief system, guess what? They places a point of emphasis, as it says here, some point of doctrine too strongly and obsessively. All right. So I want to reiterate. The heretic is not an unbeliever, far from it. The heretic is not an unbeliever, far from it. Right? Even on this side of the Jordan, so to speak. If we're not careful, based upon this definition, we could place too much emphasis on certain things like fringes, or certain clothing we wear, to the point that we miss the point behind it, the feast days, putting so much emphasis on it, but we're forgetting what it's all about. We're forgetting about the salvation portion of it, the reminder, the signs, identity, right? You have some that that's all they talk about is identity, but they don't talk about anything else in the text. But guess what? Just because someone talk about identity a lot doesn't mean that they are an unbeliever. It just means that, hey, they putting a lot of, placing a strong point of emphasis on that area. But it doesn't mean that they are an unbeliever. But unfortunately, when you hear people from within Christianity that call themselves defenders of the word, they use that term heretic as if those that don't agree with what they agree to don't believe, completely don't believe. That's how they use it. Like you are a non-believer. All right. So let's deal with heresy. What is heresy? The etymology dictionary definition of heresy. This is what it says. Doctrine or opinion, right, at variance with established standards. An opinion of private men different from that of the Catholic and Orthodox Church. Wait a minute. See, this is where we have to be careful, right? And not getting caught up in this stuff right here. See, you don't have to try to prove yourself to anyone within the Catholic Church or the Orthodox, in other words, the Christian Church. Because truth be told, it was the Catholic Church / Orthodox Church that signed the edicts, the ecclesiastical papal laws to enslave our people. It was the Catholic Church. It was the Christian Church. They're the ones that did that. So an opinion of private men different from that of Catholic and Orthodox Church. So guess what? Technically, how they use it, if you don't agree to their doctrine, you are practicing heresy. That's why they're so extreme when they say that, hey, if you following the law, statutes, and commandments, they call you heretic, and they say that you're operating in heresy because you're saying that, hey, you're teaching the law, statutes, and commandments, and they're teaching that the Messiah said he's going to completely do away with them. So technically, based upon their poor understanding of the text as well as this word here, technically the Messiah will fall up under their definition of, or how they misuse the term heresy and heretic. So again, heresy, an opinion of private men different from that of the Catholic and Orthodox Church. Heresy. Anything that goes against Catholic and the Orthodox Church, Christianity, right? So school of thought, philosophical sect, a taking or choosing oneself, a choice, a means of taking. Take, seize, to choose. So again, the meaning, unorthodox religious sect or doctrine, and the Latin word used by Christian writers in the late Latin. So we see that the meaning of heresy is unorthodox religious sect or doctrine. But let's look at the Greek definition of it, right? It says a choice, an example, special. In other words, a special party or abstract, this union. And then the sub entry number 4, a body of men following their own tenets. In other words, sect or party. Now, let me show you this inside the text. All right. So again, the key understanding to heresy, according to the church, right? This falls right in line to how they teach it. An opinion of private men different from that of the Catholic and Orthodox Church. So call me a heresy, call me heretical, call me a heretic, because I will not subscribe to any of the Catholic Christian doctrine again. Anything that's contrary to the actual word of the Most High. Going to honor the Shabbat, going to honor the feast days, the law, statutes, and commandments. Going to do the things that Isaiah 56 tells us that pleases the Most High. So the sons of strangers, sons of the and daughters of the eunuchs are supposed to do the things that please the Most High. And he made it clear in that chapter to honor the Shabbat and honor his covenant, and said, take hold of his covenant. That's dealing with those that are not blood descendants of Israel. That didn't change. Fact, the early so-called, what they would call the church, right? The early Gentiles didn't have a problem with honoring the Shabbat because they met with Paul. They came to him in Acts chapter 13 is noted on the Shabbat, asking them to teach them on the Shabbat, which Paul did that for a couple of years, at least 2 years. So they didn't have a problem with honoring the Shabbat. They already knew what was already laid out. But anyway, right? So again, Apostle Paul, I want to make this clear. Fact, Apostle Paul was accused by Israelites who didn't follow the Messiah of heresy. Remember, Paul still believed in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, but Paul believed in Torah. He believed in teaching out of the law and the prophets. So technically, he was still a believer, right? He still practiced Torah. But the difference is he followed the Messiah. But he was considered a heretic, right? But I'm going to show you that actually it's not in the context of what we think. It simply means sect in the particular text. So Apostle Paul was accused by Israelites who didn't follow the Messiah of heresy. Let's go to Acts chapter 24, verse 13 and 14. It says, neither can they prove the things whereof they now accuse me. But this I confess unto thee, that after the way, make a note of that, I confess unto thee that after the way which they call heresy, in other words, a sect, a group, Nazarenes, right? That after the way which they call heresy, in other words, a sect, a group of people, and we're going to break down the way. So worship I Elohim of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. See, Paul made it clear that he believed all things that his forefathers believed in, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They believed in following the law, statutes, and commandments because Genesis makes it clear. It says that Abraham walked in all the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High, said that he was perfect, said that he honored it, took the charge of the Most High. We know Isaac, we know Jacob, they all honored the covenant. The covenant was given before it was handed down to Israel. It was established with Abraham. Abraham had the same covenant that the Israelites had. Those 10 commandments, honoring especially remembering the Shabbat, Abraham honored the Shabbat. Guess what? But the covenant was not created with Abraham. It was established with Abraham. In other words, it was stabilized with someone that was stable, just like with Noah. The commandments, the covenant was not created. It was established. Established means to make stable. So out of all the people during Noah's generation, he was stable. So the Most High handed the covenant to him because he was stable. But guess what? Established does not mean create. So that means that the covenant existed before Noah. Anyway, I'm going to stop right there. We'll deal with that another time. But it says here, Paul is making it clear, I worship Elohim. And we're going to deal with the term God in part 2. We're going to deal with it a little bit as we close out, but we're going to deal with it in part 2. I worship Elohim of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and the prophets. The Messiah made it clear that the law and the prophets is going to teach 2 key principles: to love the Father and to love one another, which those are not new commandments. Many refer to those as the law of Christ. Actually, if you read the text in its proper context, the Pharisees and the scribes came to the Messiah and asked him, what is the greatest of all the laws? Didn't say create new laws. He said, what is the greatest? So he's saying within all the laws, the great is what? To love the Father and love one another. They said that the law and the prophets, in other words, what we would call the first 5 books of the Bible, the law of Moses or the Pentateuch, and the prophets, right? Said that the law and the prophets, all the writings of the prophets, is going to teach 2 key principles: love one another. Love the Most High and love one another, love our neighbors. And those are not new commandments. It's right there in Torah. All right. So this is the very thing that Apostle Paul made it clear, believing all things. He didn't say some things, believing all things which are written in the law and the prophets. So Paul confessed to honoring the commandments of the Most High and following the way. So let's go to Acts chapter 9, verse 1 and 2, because this is a key verse here, set of verses here. And Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughtered against the disciples of Adonijah, which transliterates to the word Lord, went unto the high priest. Verse 2, and desired of him letters to Damascus, to the synagogues, that if he found any of this way, you notice what I had to make sure this is in caps so you understand, that if he found any of this way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. Found of this way. Now, Apostle Paul is dealing with Israelites. He's not dealing with other nations. He's dealing with Israelites. I want to make that clear. Notice it doesn't say Christians. He's looking for those that are what? Following the way, followers of the way. He's not looking for Christians. The young Saul in this text, he's not looking for Christians. Paul never referred to himself as a Christian, but he referred to himself as an Israelite, but he never referred to himself as a Christian. The disciples never referred to themselves as Christians. The Messiah never said, go out and make Christians. That's biblical. That's facts. So we see here that if he found any of this way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. So Saul was given over to a fierce objective, that of destroying all the followers of the way. So Saul, in other words, Saul was sent to persecute the Israelite followers of the way, his own brothers and sisters of the way, not Christians. So who is the way? John chapter 14, verse 6. Who is the way? Yahushua, your translation would say Jesus. Yahushua said unto him, I am the way. I am the way, Darak, the truth, Aman, and the life, Napash. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. I am the way, Darak. That's key. I am the way. Ha, Darak. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me. So the Messiah, the Hebrew Israelite Messiah, is the way. So Paul never referred to himself and others as Christians. You'll see the term brothers, sisters. You'll see the terms, for example, of holy people, right? Because he didn't use that word saint. That word saint, that's like a 9th century construct created to refer to the Roman Catholic Pope and those that they deemed to achieve sainthood. No, he was dealing with Quadash, the holy people of the Most High. But Paul never referred to himself as a Christian. He never addressed anyone in his letters using the term Christian. That is a fact. Paul never used the term Christian in any of his letters. But Paul was sent out to search and persecute followers of the way. Followers, Yalak, of the way. That's what Paul was charged to do. So what is a Christian? What is a Christian? We hear this tossed around a lot. What is a Christian? Let's go to the etymology dictionary definition of Christian. It says this: a believer in and follower of Christ. Now, when you understand the etymology dictionaries, right, what they do is they're going to show you the history, the evolution in terms of the definition of a word. They're going to show you what a word meant at certain periods of time. So when you see 1520s, you'll see as a noun, a follower in and follower of Christ. But it says in the 1550s, professing the Christian religion. All right. So those dates make a world of a difference to really get a proper understanding. Okay. So let me say that again. A believer in and follower of Christ, 1520s. Then when we get down to where it says 1550s, professing the Christian religion. A Christian, 1550s, professing the Christian religion, received into the Christian church. But it says, goes on to say here, says here, Germanic borrowing of church, Latin, Christianus, from ecclesiastical Greek, Christianos, from Christos, and tell us to see Christ. And it says first used in Antioch according to Acts. Now, this is what's interesting here. It says Acts chapter 11, verse 25 through 26, meaning having the manner and spiritual character proper to a follower of Christ. And it says it's from 1590s, right? So when we go down to the last sentence, it says Christian Science as the name of a religious sect is from 1863. So make a note of this portion here. The point that I made as I read out of that dictionary, that definition, a believer in a believer in and follower of Christ, 1550s, as an adjective professing the Christian religion, received into the Christian church. So does the word Christian simply means a believer and follower of Christ? I'll ask this question again. Does the word Christian simply mean, does it simply means a believer in and follower of Christ, the Messiah? No, it's not that simple. See, no, I'm just going to explain. I'm just going to give you a few sources here. Studies in Jewish and Christian history, right? All these Greek terms form with the Latin suffix "ianus," exactly as the Latin words of the same derivation express the idea that the men or things referred to belong to the person to whose name the suffix is added. In Greek, as in Latin, the suffix "ianus" is a substitute for the positive genitive. All right. It goes on to say, right, it tells us that in a nutshell, Caesarus service, in other words, it means a slave of Caesar. So when you understand what this is saying, right, express the idea that men or things referred to belong to the person. So actually, when you look at the term Christian, it actually really means slave of Christ. And during that time, it was a derogative term, because even being a slave of anyone was considered a derogative term. Unfortunately, even when we look at it from today, when we think of slavery, we think of chattel slavery, right? Chattel slavery was against the law. Chattel slavery was against the law. Torah makes it clear that you're not supposed to kidnap and sell people, or kidnap and hold them hostage. Either way, that's in Torah. That's a law. You could just knock down just that narrative that people within the Kemet community try to use to go against our Dabar HaKodesh. Just that alone tells you they don't know the scriptures. They just know talking points to try to sway people to what they think and what they believe, to bash our holy text and make it into what they want to make it into, trying to say the white man wrote this. Anyway, so page 294, it says this: although critics are not agreed whether the Roman administration or the population of Antioch bestowed the new name on the followers of the Nazarene, they all agreed that the term was invented by non-Christians. Let me make that clear. Let me say that again. They all agree that the term was invented by non-Christians. Let me say it one more time. They all agree. Let me say it one more time. They all agree that this term, that word Christian, right, that it was created, it was invented by non-Christians.
What?
Let's give that a 3-piece right there, because the Israelites didn't create this term. Let me say that again. The Israelites did not create the term Christian, and they would not have used the term Christian. Why? If many of them rejected the Messiah, why would they refer to the followers and use that term in association with the very person that they didn't believe in? They would not have used that term. When Peter says he says as a, you see the term as a, doesn't mean he's saying be a Christian, call yourselves Christians. No, he's saying as a, the characteristics. If they're saying that Christian means what? A slave of the Messiah. In Hebrew, you see the word abadah, which actually transliterates to servant. So Peter wasn't saying call yourselves Christians. He was taking that definition of it and saying, hey, let's be servants. And if you want to use the term slave, let's be servants, but not from a perspective of chattel slavery. Let's be servants of the Messiah. Because many will go to there and say, hey, look, Christian, the word Christian right here, Peter says it. No, that's not what it means. Right? That's not what it means. The word Christian is in the text 3 times. But if you put it in its proper context, they did not refer to themselves as Christians. So let's toss that out. Let's toss that out. All right. So let me read that one more time. Although critics are not agreed whether the Roman administration or the population of Antioch bestowed the new name on the followers of the Nazarenes, they all agreed that the term was invented by non-Christians. Page 800. If the Christians at Antioch coined the term with respect to the outside world, how should we understand this use of the name? It was hardly meant as a substitute for the individual appellation of a follower of Christ. Later, some martyrs to all questions about their names, origin, and status gave one answer: Christianus sum or sum. In other words, well, nevertheless, it goes on to say, but the earliest instance of this use is, so far as I know, from 177 AD. The apologist Justin, for example, gives his status exactly in the beginning of his work. So again, the earliest instance of this use, so far as I know, from 177 AD, right, by the apologist Justin. Now, some would go to the works of Josephus and say, hey, you know what? In Josephus, you'll see him make reference, for example, called a term called the tribe of Christian. So this is what it says in Josephus, because Josephus, his works, you're talking going into the late first century, going into the second century, right? It says, just coming from the works of Josephus, now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man. We know it's not Jesus, Yahweh Shai. Some of you guys say Yeshua, but this is transliterated to English. But now there was about this time a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. He was the Christ. And when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men amongst us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at the first did not forsake him, for he appeared to them alive again the third day, as the divine prophet had foretold these and 10,000 other wonderful things concerning him. In the tribe of Christians, let me say that again, and the tribe of Christians, so named from him, are not extinct or is extinct at this day. Are not extinct at this day. Let me read that again. So Josephus makes mention of a tribe of Christians, right? But is this the earliest usage of the word Christian outside the Bible? Right? This is a great source right here. UNC Charlotte, right? This is the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, right? And this is an article titled "The Jewish Roman World of Jesus" by Dr. James Tabor. Josephus on Jesus, right? Coming from the Antiquities of Josephus, right? This is what he points out. This is what he highlights, right? The link is right there. The words in all caps are likely interpolations added by Christian copyists over the centuries in an attempt to make Josephus support faith in Jesus as the Christ. See, many don't understand that Josephus' works have been interpolated, right? To try to push a certain narrative, to try to, as you'll see the tribe of Christians, his works have been interpolated, right? I use Josephus, but you have to be careful how you use it. You have to be careful because many of his works have been interpolated. As you see here, the words in all caps are likely interpolations. Now we're going to define interpolation shortly, added by Christian copyists over the centuries in an attempt to make Josephus support faith in Jesus as the Christ. We have only 3 Greek manuscripts of this section of Josephus, all from the 11th century. All from the 11th century. These phrases added rather clumsily appears to be rather, and I'm going to show you the examples too, to be rather obvious additions even to the modern reader in English. Once restored to its more original reading, Josephus offers us a most fascinating reference to Jesus. Indeed, it is the earliest reference to Jesus outside the New Testament. and it's rather matter of fact. Neutral reporting makes it all the more valuable to the historian. Now, notice this. This is what's been added. It says here, now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man. But notice it added, if it be lawful to call him a man, right? For he was a doer of wonders. And then they added, interpolated, a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure, right? He drew many after him, but then they added this portion in it, both the Jews and the Gentiles, he was the Christ. When Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men among us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him, at the first did not forsake him. And then they included this here, for he appeared to them alive again the third day, as the divine prophet had foretold these, and then thousands others wonderful things about him. Right? And it goes on to say, and the tribe of Christians, so named from him, are not extinct at this day. Right? But then when you read the entirety of this article, when you go further down, it says Professor Shlomo Pines found a different version of Josephus' testimony in an Arabic version of the 10th century. So an older version, transliteration of Josephus' works, was discovered a century prior to what I just read from. And it says it has obviously not been interpolated in the same way as the Christian version circulating in the West. Right? So let's see what interpolate means real quick. Interpolate, to insert, in other words, something of a different nature into something else. Right? To insert something of a different nature into something else. The sub-entry says insert words in a book or other text, especially in order to give a false impression as to its date. But the key is, again, insert something of a different nature into something else. So that in interpolating the text, inserting words, phrases. Our language was interpolated. We'll deal with that another time. So going back to the source here, right? And this is what it says at this time, and this is what he's given the actual writings that was written, that was transliterated a century prior to what's being circulated among the Christian church. At this time, there was a wise man who was called Jesus, and his conduct was good, and he was known to be virtuous, and many people from among the Jews and the other nations became his disciples. Pilate condemned him to be crucified and to die. And those who had become his disciples did not abandon their loyalty to him. They reported that he had appeared to them 3 days after his crucifixion and that he was alive. Accordingly, they believed that he was the Messiah, concerning whom the prophets have recounted wonders. Right? So I'm just giving you some sources to let you see. When we start dealing with that word Christian, we can say for sure, emphatically, the Israelites did not use that term. They did not use that term. Paul did not use that term because that's what many within the church defaults to, is Apostle Paul. But Apostle Paul, you don't see in any of his letters, not a single letter with him referring to himself as a Christian or addressing the assembly as Christians, a group of Christians. Right? When you see him interacting with Agrippa said, the king of Agrippa said, hey, you almost persuaded me to be what? A Christian. He wasn't saying it from a positive perspective. It was a negative construct. Paul never defended that word Christian. Paul never even referred to himself as a Christian. All right. So the works of Josephus was interpolated. Of course, agendas, right? All kinds of agendas. All right. So what time do we have here? All right. We'll touch on this just a little and we'll continue on this, do a part two. I don't believe in God. Let me make that clear. I don't believe in God. And I'm not an atheist. Right? We're not going to do it tonight. We're going to define the word Allahayim. Some would say Elohim. That's who we should be making reference to. I've said this a number of times. If you could say the word God, you should be able to say Yah. If you don't want to say Yahweh, Yahweh or Yahuwah or Yahweh or Yahweh, then simply say Yah. That's the short form. Everyone is in agreement that it's Yah in the short form. I can prove that it's Yahweh, but still, if you could say God, you should be able to say Yah. You should not struggle with saying Yah. But again, we've gotten so comfortable with saying God. No, I don't believe in God. I believe in our Allahayim, and some would say Elohim. And we're going to do a full teaching on that in part two. I'm going to touch on that to share with you why I say Allahayim, not Elohim, Allahayim. But again, I don't believe in God. I'm going to make that clear. I don't believe in God. All right. Let me touch on this law real quick. Some of you guys probably remember when I dealt with did the lesson on the Bantu, not getting into all the other stuff, but you saw the lesson there. But I want to share this text again. Exodus chapter 23, verse 13, it says, and in all things that I have said unto you, be circumspect and make no mention of the name of other Allahims, neither let it be heard, Shammai, out of thy mouth. So the Most High don't want us to call on any other deities. But what's happened through syncretism, what's happening through interpolation, right? Translating text to another language is the acceptance of invoking and calling on other deities. Every language, every culture have a set of deities that they believe in. So their language is going to be right in alignment with their culture and their belief system. The Greeks have their belief system. The Romans have their belief system. The Egyptians, the Babylonians have their own belief system. So of course, the Norse, right? Germans, Germanic, even though we're dealing with the Anglos and the Saxons, but guess what? They still believe the same thing, the same gods, right? So the Hebrew definition of mention, it says this, right? Zakar, it says this, to mark. In other words, so as to be recognized. An example, to remember, to mention, be mindful, make to be remembered, bring, in other words, call, come, keep, put, to, or in remembrance, recall. But let me share with you another translation. Now, I want to make this clear. I don't do the NIV. I don't support the NIV. I don't use this as a foundation of what we teach using our assembly, but I'm using this because the comparison of this verse is very key, because it gives another perspective on this verse, actually the same perspective, but just giving you in a different phrase. But the reason why I don't really do the NIV as well as the Message Bible and other Bibles that's based off of the Alexandria manuscript, if you study the manuscripts as far as the Alexandria versus the Antioch or Byzantine manuscripts, you'll see that there's over 60,000 errors within the Alexandria manuscript. You'll see passages not there. I'll do a whole lesson on that. I'm not trying to go geek mode on you guys. So most of the modern Bibles are based off of the Alexandria manuscripts, Alexandria, Egypt manuscripts. All right. And you'll see key passages not there. Okay. So Exodus chapter 23, verse 13. Be careful to do everything I have said to you. Do not invoke the names of other gods, right? Do not let them be heard on your lips. The Oxford Dictionary definition of invoke, this is what it says: cite or appeal to someone or something as an authority for an action or in support of an argument. Subentry number 1, call on a deity or spirit in prayer as a witness or for inspiration, right? Also, it says summon. In other words, a spirit by charms or incantation. So guess what? We dealt with the Bantu stuff, but the same rules apply with all right across the board, right? When you start dealing with the English language, right? When you start dealing with the phrase Proto-Germanic, Proto-Indo-Germanic, right? That's still dealing with the tree of languages that's shooting out of what is called the Proto-Indo-European language, or you could just say the language of Japheth. So you see the Proto-Germanic, you'll see that, and then the English language is a branch, a shoot of that. Okay, and I'm going to break that down real quick here. So remember, summon a spirit by charms or incantation. So this is what it's saying. We're not supposed to be summoning. We're not supposed to be mentioning, bringing up other deities, and we're serving the Most High. See, Hasatan is crafty. The Catholic Church, Christianity is very crafty. This is why through this system, through the tool of syncretism, you see so many different things within the church. You see so many paganistic things that have been imported. And they had a habit of what? Trying to put a Catholic spin on pagan worship, pagan practices. All right. So let's deal with the word charms real quick. The etymology dictionary definition of the word charms, it says incantation, magic, charm, magic, spell, incantation, songs, enchantments, religious formula. And you see the word canary, to sing. Guess what? You singing the word God in many songs, singing it, reciting it. Transliterations have it there. Why is it that you see the word Yah, right? It's, if you go to the definition of it, the Hebrew definition of it tells you it occurs in what is called the Old Testament over 50 times. But we see it only transliterated inside the text once to the name Jah. So how come they don't have it all through the text? Why? Because you'll be calling on Yah as to calling on God. That's something to think about. So that's right. Singing it in songs now. Just because you say you believe in God, guess what? That could point to a number of different things. But that word God comes from the Germanic language, which English comes from. And the Germans, right? The Anglos, right? They worship the Norse gods. So Gott, right? That is pointing to the Norse gods, the Norse deities. And then you have Godder is the plurality of these deities. All right. We'll deal with that real quick. Just a little bit of it. I'm not going to get too deep of it because it's late. So charms, the verb, to recite or cast a magic spell, to enchant, to fill, in other words, someone with desire. So let me share something with you real quick. This right here is what is called the Proto-Indo-European tree, right? And you see 4 major trunks here, right? But notice here, you see the Balto-Slavo-Germanic, right? But then you see it breaks off into 2, right? If we go to the left here, right, you see some of the languages that come from it. You see Bulgaria, some popular Ukrainian, White Russian, Great Russian, Polish, the Czechs, right? You know, we see some of the other languages here. Armenian, no, that's not the same. All right. But then when we see this, the left side of this trunk, because it's two trunks, right? It breaks up into Balto-Slavo-Germanic, breaks up into two trunks, right? We see Anatolian. We see, let's see, Celto, Italo, Takarian, right? And we see how that breaks up. You know, you see Latin, and that breaks up. That Latin breaks up into four, into Romans. When you see Romanian, Spanish, Italian, French, right? But when we look at this Proto-Germanic trunk right here, right? This Germanic trunk breaks into two. So we see Proto-Germanic, right? But then we see as it goes up here, it breaks into two, Western Germanic and Northern Germanic. So in the Northern Germanic, we see Gothic. We see Scandinavian. Go further up, Danish, Swedish, Iceland, Norwegian, right? But then if we stay to the left, we see Western Germanic, English, Frisian, High German, Low German, Dutch, Flemish. But all of this falls up under what? The Germanic trunk here. So the English language still ties into the Germanic language. Ultimately, these are what is called the Proto-Indo-European language. Right now, I know I'm getting a little geek mode here, but this is key because many will focus on when you're trying to identify who's who. Many just deal with the skin complexion. You don't just need skin complexion. You don't just need DNA. You can also use language. Language is key because I remember when I taught this years upon years ago, I got a lesson that I did called The Deception of the English Language. When I shared with the congregation that not Hindus, but Indians, right? In India, they are considered Caucasian. They couldn't believe it when I told them. But when I share this tree here, notice here, when we go here, Ariano, Greco, Armenic, right? But notice here, this breaks up into two trunks. You see Greek, and here's the different variations. But notice you see Indic, right? Or, and then when we go here, we see it breaks off into two. We see Armenian right here, but it continues over Indo-Iranian, right? And then we get here, it breaks up into two, Old Iranian. But notice what you see here, Sanskrit. So you see Hindi, Marathi, right? You see the different languages here, right? But you see Sanskrit listed under what? The Proto-Indo-European language. The term Semitic, right? Or Shemitic, however you want to pronounce it, right? Initially was referred to as a group of languages. All right. So again, Indo-European language, Proto-Indo-European language. The acronym is PI. All right. So just going a little Greek geek mode on you here. All right. So let's deal with this etymology dictionary of definition of the word God, and we'll wrap it up. God, it says here, supreme being, deity, the Christian God, right? But notice some of the words you see from proto. It says this word comes from Proto-Germanic, right? You see Guthin, but it says here, source also of Old Saxon, Old Frisian, Dutch, God, Old High German, Got, German, Got, Old Norse, Gut, right? Gothic, Gut, right? So you still see here, the key is God, right? That is not a construct of the Most High. It's Elohim. Some would say Elohim, right? So when you say God, that is that's singular. But when you say Goder, that is plurality. But this is all pointing to the Norse gods, right? Gods and goddesses. This is not pointing to the Most High. This is the influence of the Christian church, or the Christian Catholic Church, or the Catholic Christian Church. But notice what you see here again, Old Saxon, Frisian, Dutch, right? So if we go back to our tree here, let's go back to our tree. Let's go back to our tree. Remember what I said, right? We're under the Western Germanic trunk. Notice what you see. Frisian, as we pointed out, you see Dutch, you see Flemish, and you see English still under what? The Germanic language. And guess what? If you go back and do your research, you'll see that they served the Norse gods. He said they had the same belief system. All right. So let's go back to this definition. Right. Notice what you see. Saxon, Frisian, Dutch. Those are still part of the Germanic language. Okay. So God is singular and Goddard is plural. One last thing I want to share real quick as we wrap it up. What you see here is Goddard de Marung, right? This is where you get the short form of it as God DAM. I'm not going to say it here, being respectful and don't want to, I'm very conscientious of saying certain things. So notice what it says, going into the shadow of the gods, right? But notice, right? Plural, gods. Goddard, remember what I said, Goddard. Goddard is the plurality of what? You transliterate it to the word gods, but that's the plurality of the Norse gods. Going into the shadow of these Norse gods, often erroneously called twilight of the gods, right? The Teutonic doomsday, when all the old gods would be destroyed and reabsorbed by the great goddess Skadi, which is a female goddess within the Norse religion, the Norse belief system, and she is also worshipped part of the Germanic belief system. Remember, the Germans, the Norse gods is not just what we think it is when we start dealing with the Vikings, and that's dealing also with the Germans. And guess what? That's a major tree trunk. So it says reabsorbed by the great goddess Skadi. In other words, Skadi is like it says here, like Kali in the Far East, so equivalent to Kali. Skadi stood for the primal womb of darkness that cyclically devoured worlds and gave them new births. The Scandinavian and Teutonic concept of cyclic universes or cyclic, cyclic universes, each with its renewable set of gods, right? Goddard was essentially identical to that of India. But let me go back here. Remember this word, Goddard de Marung, right? This is where you get the short form when you say God DAM. That term actually means go into the shadows of the gods. That's what that term actually means. All right, guys. So this is why we have to be careful of what we say and what we do. We have to get more abreast up to speed to these different terms. All right. These different words. Right. And understanding that words have meaning. We're going to stop right here because I know it's getting late. Not getting late. It is late. It's already late. It's not getting late. But I want to stop right here. I still want to do a lesson on what I pointed out. And I'm going to break this down more when I say that I don't believe in God. And as I pointed out earlier, don't call me a Christian. So I want to be clear. This is not trying to poke at anyone, because this is me. This is Pastor Kelly Richardson. This is what I go off of. This is what I teach our assembly. So I want to make this clear. This is not trying to throw shade at anyone, because sometimes, unfortunately, when you do certain teachings, sometimes the people can take things one way and before you know it, instigate something that's not there. So I want to make this clear. When I say I'm not a Christian, I'm dealing with myself and what I teach in our assembly. We don't use the term Christian. The Messiah didn't teach us to be Christian. The Messiah didn't teach us to go out and make Christians, right? The Messiah did not teach that. And no, I don't believe in God or got or got her. I don't believe in the Trinity, right? And we're going to break that down with the proper context, right? We're not going to use those. I don't use the Trinity. And I've been doing this for years, right? I'm going to show you what Elohim, which some would say Elohim, means when we do part 2. You don't need to be using these terms that have been interpolated. You don't have to go and prove to these Christians that you believe in their doctrine. Those are tenets of the Christian religion. The Messiah never mentioned the term Trinity. That term Trinity is not something that has been isolated or monopolized by the Roman Catholic Church. We know that other cultures, the Romans, the Greeks, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Etruscans, all of them had a triple goddess, had a trinity. The Hinduism, I could break all of that down. I've been doing that for years anyway. So family, we need to get away from all of that stuff and get back to the Most High, right? Regardless of the language, right? When we look at the Egyptians, as I pulled up in the lesson I did earlier this week, right? Pharaoh knew the name of Yahweh, right? But the Pharaoh did not worship Yahweh, right? It was the Israelites. Pharaoh made it clear. He said he was giving praises to what is called the Eye of Ra in that text, right? In Exodus, right? So even the Pharaoh made it clear. He has his set of guys that he worshiped, or a set of deities that he worshiped, but he did not worship our Most High, our Yah. And we're going to touch on it again, like I said, when we do part 2. But this lesson, I encourage you to go back over it. I shared some resources. I could have gone even further with it, but I want to make this clear. Apostle Paul never used the term Christian. The Messiah never used the term Christian. The disciples would never, the Israelites of that time would never use the term Christian. They would not create that construct, as we talked, right, discussed, because Christos, right, is a transliteration of Mashiach. Some of you guys would say Mashiach, right? So they're not going to refer to, if they rejected, if our ancient brothers and sisters rejected the Messiah, what makes you think that they're going to use that term to his and associate it with his followers? So just wrapping things up. Our brothers and sisters at that time used the term brothers and sisters. They used the term holy people, right? When you see the word saint, it means holy people. They use disciple. Matter of fact, Paul had a perfect opportunity to use the term Christian. If you go to Romans, I believe Romans chapter 16, he had a perfect opportunity to throw the word Christian up in there, because he's giving a salutation. He's touching on a number of people right there. How come he did not use the term Christians there? I'll just read a little of it real quick, right? He when he gives his salutation here, he says, "I commend unto you Phoebe, our sister, which is a servant." Wait a minute. You see the word servant here. You don't see Christian, because you won't. Verse 2, right? That ye receive her in Adonai, as becometh. You see the word saint, but of course we don't see the word Christian. Verse 3, we see Greek Priscilla and Aquila, my helpers. And of course, you see the transliteration Christ Jesus, but we know you're not seeing the word Christian there. Paul had a perfect opportunity to use the word Christian. How come we don't see the word Christian here? Verse 5, likewise, greet the church. Of course, ecclesia, I'm not going to get into that right now. That is in their house. Salute my well-beloved, right? But notice we see here, we don't see any other word. We don't see Christian here. We skip down. We see Mary, of course, we see here. But when we get down to verse 7, right? Andronicus and Junia. Let me say that again. Andronicus and Junia, my kinsmen. Guess what? He didn't say fellow Christians. He didn't say kinsmen. When he said kinsmen, guess what? This is brother and sister, because Junia is actually a female apostle. Contrary to what many people believe, she was a female apostle. That's a whole nother discussion. But notice, he never used the term Christian. And as he's saluting all these different people, he's not using the word Christian. He had a perfect opportunity to use the word Christian, but he's not using it. So family, don't feel like you have to, as you explain yourself to your family members, letting them know that you are Israel, whether you use your DNA or not, but proof that you are Israel, right? And you try to prove to them that, guess what? You believe in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. You don't have to compromise yourself and say, hey, I'm a Christian, or I believe in God. Or you don't have to take on those constructs. Why? Because again, you just say, I believe in Yah. If you don't want to say the full name, I believe in Yah. And if you want to explain to them what it truly means, go to the scriptures I just highlighted. Paul went looking for those that were followers of the way. He was not searching for Christians. That is Acts chapter 9, verse 1 and 2. All right. So with that being said, family, I appreciate the time that you guys have sacrificed tonight. Go back and watch the lesson, and feel free to post your questions and comments in the comment section. Share the video. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, and I will not have a problem with responding and answering to you. So again, let's toss out this false doctrine. Let's give the 3-piece to those that are operating in the foolishness that we see, that are doing a lot of deceiving of our brothers and sisters. Let's just completely give a 3-piece to many that call themselves defenders of the very religion, the systems that have enslaved our ancestors and continue to hold weights over our people, strongholds over our people. Let's all right, family. So with that being said, have a blessed night. Shalom.